welcome. I'm here with Rob Archer, CEO of Codebase Coworking in Charlottesville, Virginia. And for the serious fans of the Everything Coworking podcast network, Rob is I don't even know what we call this. Rob is going live today on the Flex Uncensored podcast. So we're gonna sit on this for a few minutes, but I'm gonna go. Geo likes to be personal, and I'm just gonna, I'm gonna get serious about the business side. So that's what we're gonna talk about here.
Sounds good.
Thanks for doing a double.
Double.
Yeah, I think I said to you, I said, look, if you're gonna sign up with Geo, you still have to do mine.
Yeah.
And part of it because I just wanted to catch up because I didn't get to go to the immersive. Okay, let's start from the top. So, okay, let's talk about Codebase lives inside of the Code Building, which is the
That's right.
center of developing entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, you speaking of you doubled down on going to school in Charlottesville, undergrad and business school.
We call that being a double who.
A double who, okay.
Because Wahoo is,
Wait, you're the
we are
Wahoos?
the Wahoos, right? It's Virginia Cavaliers, but the
The
sort of code
what?
name there is Wahoo. And
Oh,
so
okay.
you will hear people say, oh, you're a double who,
Yeah.
which 2 degrees. There you go.
Yeah. Wait, and so is your wife.
That's right. She's a
Okay.
double who also.
How common is this?
Pretty common, I think. I just know lots of other folks who are also double who's, and that's, we a lot of folks that are went to school here end up coming back here.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you come back for an advanced degree, you may go off somewhere and then grow up in your career, but then come back and retire. And so there's quite a few folks that are double who's, and it's not necessarily in business, but it's in all kinds
Yeah.
of different areas, right? So
Who knows?
we love our little university here. We love our community. And so the opportunity to come back and get an advanced degree, but not only that, we're top rankings, right? So
Yeah.
you're
Right. Totally. A grade school. Yeah.
man, you went to business school, and so the case study
Yeah.
methodology
Hmm.
is something that resonates well with my learning style. And
Yep.
so anyway, yeah.
I love it. Okay. So this guy who's some sort of data scientist decides to develop this building right downtown and
Mhm.
wants it to be a hub and wants to make it a, kind of place make for entrepreneurs in the area. So tell me a little bit more about that goal, the goal of Codebase, and maybe how that impacts some of the decisions that you make. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's start there.
Well, the
And I bring that up because, sorry, not to cut, I just cut you off. Not to cut you off, but I did. One thing I think about a lot is in the work that I do. I mean, I'm really like a total capitalist, but also like really starting to find my identity in terms of like community engagement. I used to be like so, not to talk about me, but for a second, because you make me think about this because you're so engaged in the community. And I don't know that I ever identified in that way. And all of a sudden I see people like you in your story. I'm like, no, that's like really me. Like in undergrad, I was so into everything. And then you go off and you work and you're like, well, now I'm working and I'm busy.
Mhm.
And now it's
Mhm.
like, oh, well, how do you find that balance? And I really want that to be part of my life. But the sorry, back to my question.
No, this is
The
good.
So in the work that I do, I talk to a lot of different operators or soon to be operators. Oh, me being a total capitalist. And I always think, oh, everybody's here to make money in this business, which is not that easy to do. But I always our startup school starts with what's your why?
Mhm.
Because it is actually true that there are a lot of reasons that people start these spaces. And profitability is not always number one on the list. So
Yeah.
I try, it's important for me when I'm working with someone to really understand, like, well, why are you doing this and what are your goals? Because when I assume it's profit, it is not always. And so you make decisions differently in that case.
That's it's layered, which is kind of cool because I'm a capitalist also. And I am very, very of the mindset that, if somebody can solve a problem for lots of people, they can do really, really well. And, as a result, have lots and lots of resources. And thankfully, the people that I've been sort of interacting with that have lots of resources are people that, you enjoy being around, and they have a heart to give and to help. And so, the finances are extremely important. And I think the model of this experiment, 250-year experiment, and the capitalism that has come out is actually, I'm thankful for it, right? And so that does now allow for a view that's a little bit different than just sort of we got to make money right away or else we're going under, right? So for again, I'm just a big fan of our owner and ownership group, known him and for a long time, and the folks that work in the family office. They're just amazing people that I'm happy to and love to be around. And so this idea of being invited to a team that wants to create something that's beautiful and functional and has an amazing design and checks these boxes of LEED Platinum and a place where people can grow up in their career in our community and it has an opportunity to attract and retain talent in our town. That's just, those are, while altruistic, they still have grounded in the reality and fundamentals of somebody has to earn some money to pay for this, right? And so thankfully, there are folks with resources that care, and then I have an opportunity to sort of reflect that as in a way, a front-facing face to the building and the shared workspace. So, I've been in small business for a long time, and I do understand very clearly what it's like to make payroll, right? And what it's like to sort of try to work on a budget as you're designing and creating and developing and those things. So there's a frugality to what I try to bring, and I like to fix things. So I get involved in doing stuff, where maybe, I used to say to my dad, Dad, I think we're in over our heads,
Yeah.
Dad. So there's that aspect of wanting to try to do things as efficiently as possible and make the dollar stretch. But when it comes to doing a build out or something, when you start to talk about financials and break even, you know, break even is equal to fixed cost divided by your unit contribution. Unit contribution is the price minus your variable cost. And in a model like this, you would use an average price and an average variable cost. Well, the way to get the break-even time frames down or shorter is to reduce the numerator, which is a fixed cost, right?
Yep.
So, but if you've made a decision that you're going to spend a higher fixed cost, then that says your break-even time frames or dollars are you need more. And so I try to explain that
For
to
those
people.
listening, can you tell Rob used to teach?
Oh yeah, oh, wait, am I breaking it down?
You're totally breaking it down. I was like, oh yeah, I got it. Yep.
So we have a build out that's high fixed cost, but it's about being able to have a place where people can enjoy the space and the beauty and the design and all those things. Um, and it is what it is. Now, in putting together projections and performance on how you're doing so I can grade myself in a benchmark against peers in the industry and what would be normal in the industry, I'll make projections different. And that would mean physically in this space is sometimes I will look at an open space area and a wonderful seat, and I say, I can't charge for that seat. But here's a seat over here that's at a desk and it's open space, and I can charge for that seat. Here's a booth. Well, there's 4 seats in this booth, but the reality is when one person sits there, that's only one person that's going to sit there. So
All
I
the
need
mistakes
to,
that people make in their projections.
right.
Totally.
And,
That's a
and
4-person booth,
right.
not
No,
actually in the bank account. Yeah.
right. No, exactly. And so because I spent time with people like you and others in the industry, I had a clue about how those things would go. And then remember I had a long time frame, a window of
Yeah.
observation and traveling and visiting places so that I could really see what made sense. And then I could come back and with the projections that were curved, if you will, for the
Yeah.
amenities and the areas that you can't monetize necessarily. And so while that will make someone want to be there, there's the other part of it is that you can't necessarily just fill them all up, right? So anyway, yes. So I did wrestle with that some, particularly early on when I was like, hey, well, if I look at this, it's really going to be challenging to break even in a reasonable time frame. And anyway, but
No,
all that
I
has
think
been
it is
understood,
helpful.
right?
Yeah, totally.
So
Right. And you're using resources like a Bill Bennett, and he's
yeah,
got a
so,
different, he's got different shareholders.
yes.
And then there's a
Yes.
geo who thinks every space should be as dense as possible and
Yeah.
only be hallways and offices.
But I also had a
Yeah.
chance to really learn about some rules of thumb in terms of generally, what should be the percentage of your total revenue from offices, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're designing a space, clearly you would probably want to put your offices on the exterior windows, right? So that there's the most natural light. But that's not how some of the design elements, were created here. But that does not absolve me from fiscal responsibility. It doesn't. Well, I mean, I guess I could say it does, but it doesn't in my
Hmm.
mind. So you still want to operate with the mindset of, making it work the way as best it possibly can.
So, in this case, who are your kind of stakeholders?
So,
Um,
I report up through the family office, and then that's the really, that's my reporting structure, if you will. I would call that like my board, if you will.
yep.
And I have someone who handles the finances, and then community manager, and a couple of folks that also work in welcoming guests and then helping us to do the things at restocking and all that. And then there's also a cleaning team, right? And so the cleaning team is instrumental. And then there's a part of we have part of the building maintenance crew that works here. And then the relationships that I have from having built things here in town, have resources and connections in areas that, if I needed locks on a
You
cabinet or
got a guy.
chairs repaired, or,
Yep.
that kind of thing. But the systems here do require some very high end, if you will, skill, right? We have a dedicated outdoor air system. Well, if you're an upper floor tenant, you're connecting into that. Those are expensive hookups, but you have to really, buy into what that means. Again, when your owner is a data scientist, and he knows that there's lots of studies that correlate cognitive performance with fresh air. Now we got fresh air, and it makes a difference. And particularly coming out of COVID, that was a really big thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I'd love to tell you how great I am, but really, I'm thankful. It's a blessing to be in this position, and also to work with people that you really care about, that have resources, right? And so,
What is your relationship to the event space? I know there's a pretty high-end sort of special event
Mhm.
space in the building. Do you manage it? Somebody else in the building
Yeah.
does? Yeah,
So,
tell
so
me
our
about that.
relationship with the building is a close relationship. It's a side by side, so all same ownership, but they're separated. And I know in several co-working spaces, managing the event space makes a lot of sense. Well, I think we could do it, but it's just part of the building. And so again, being sort of the face that's connected to lots of folks, inquiries come to me, and then I oftentimes will just make connections. And then we also, as a business, have an opportunity to sponsor events that are held in
Hmm.
the theater, right? And so that's to to a lot of folks, they don't separate those in their mind. They don't see a separation,
Yep.
but there's a pencil separation, if you will. But ultimately, that is a good reflection on the building and on us. And like, for example, in the theater, our logo is displayed on the 16 by 9 backlit LED, right? Well, it could be the building logo, it could be ours. So there
So
is
when
a
you host something in the space, I feel like I see on your Instagram, you're
yes.
always like, yeah, people in the space. Is that in Codebase or is it in the event space?
So it depends. Like, if we sponsor an event and that's held in the theater, you'll see pictures on my Instagram from that. But most of the time, and we also have areas within Codebase, like we have a live edge table and an open and space seating area where we do member lunches and such.
Okay.
You might see pictures there. Or, for example, if I'm hosting, some of the student athletes at the university over here for maybe like they have a CEO conference, a CEO academy for student athletes that are not studying business, that want to learn business. We host here, and we'll do things that are in one of the conference rooms or one of the open space areas. And so you'll see pictures from that, right? And I don't know that it matters,
Yeah. Nope. I was just curious. Yeah. I mean,
but
I
it
could,
is separate. There is a
it's
separate
separate.
to it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you don't manage
But I
it.
think I
No.
could speak to, someone who's wanting to have an event space, how that could work, or how you can sort of, you know, it's an opportunity to drive revenue.
100%. It is a completely different business. So
Yes.
yeah, when I counsel people, and it's best done if you have if you don't have full lease liability
Oh,
for the
yeah.
space,
Oh, yeah.
if because the utilization can be hard to predict. So, right, it's better when there's an owner involved and there's some sort of rev share, and the operator has maybe some background in it, because it's totally different. Like if you were managing the team, it's just like a totally separate like P&L and hiring. So,
Oh
but
yeah, no, event
yeah,
space is that's a
yeah,
whole in itself. Event management is because then you've got to decide what types of
yeah,
events, and you ought to look at the marketing for it. Like, you got to look at the market like
yeah,
anything else, right? Like,
yeah.
who are you competing against? Are you competing against the vineyard for a wedding, or are you competing against
Hmm.
the coffee shop down the street for, a speakeasy, right?
Yeah,
Or, and then in this event space, we have opportunity, for a caterer to set up a full bar. And, again, the folks that I know that do food service, some that I'm actually attached to, like my wife, do an amazing job. Well, they're very comfortable and know how to operate in the space and can do an amazing job. And that's, another part of the experience. So
yeah.
lots of cool elements.
Yeah. And you just bring, partly because of your role in the community, bring so much engagement into the space, which is also special and unique. Okay, segging into Instagram, you were I think you're my case study on pre-launch
Yes.
activities in the startup school, because you and I were doing some work together, and of course I was following along, and you told us the other day you do something like 70 hard hat tours.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was actually, we were here located on the downtown mall.
The
Which
mall, that's right. I
is,
was like, I know there's a
right.
special,
So it's
which
the
is like part
downtown.
of the why. You're right downtown. It's really central. You cannot put up, you're not spending $90 a foot on your build out. Like
Right,
it's
right.
nice. Right. So
Yeah,
back to sort of your fixed costs. Like it's gotta fit. And it's a
yes.
special building.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
a special building sort of
Yeah.
right at the west end of the mall, and it's a pedestrian mall. And so that's one of the, sort of distinguishing features of our community is this amazing downtown mall area. Well, this is right on the downtown mall. Well, when, you're constructing and you're going to have a tower crane, there's going to be interest, right? When you have to go through all of the approval processes through, the localities, there's a lot of talk communication that happens way before you put a shovel in the ground. And so that is part of doing the hard hat tours, part of answering the question, wait, what is that? And so again, we have a great construction partner, and our development team office is really right down the street from where we are. So that was an opportunity to engage with the community, if you will. And then again, like you said, I have lots of touch points in the community. And I could just say to get things started, hey guys, y'all want to take a tour of, we got a cool space, you want to take a tour? Yeah, 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 sign me up, right? That kind of thing. So I could start it very organically in that regard. But there were intentional reasons for doing the tours. One being so people understand what's happening, and two is like, there's an element of launching the shared workspace business, but also, a lot of folks were just interested, right? Because it's an amenity to the community. Now we connect one part of the mall to the other part, and then there's a fountain in the middle, right? And so then there's a couple of food service businesses that are part of the project. So that's I'm going to say that wasn't that hard, right?
It was natural.
It
It
was
just
very
was, yeah,
natural to do
yeah,
that. Now
very
it was
organic.
it was a lot of work, right? It was
Yeah.
effort because we
Yeah.
had rules and things to follow as we were working with
Yeah.
our construction partner, and a lot of that construction was happening during COVID, right? So we had protocols to follow. But
Yep.
again, you're essentially outside,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
so I think again, the timing was good in that people wanted to do something,
Yeah.
right? And thankfully construction was continued while we were through COVID. And, I mean, at 450,000 man hours, I think we had 9 COVID cases and none of them serious, right? So, that speaks to the protocols. I mean,
Yeah.
it's to the concern for how we try to do things. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And then these hard hat tours show up on Instagram. You passed 25 some time ago, but you seem to be totally natural, like on the gram. Tell me about this. How do you get comfortable with that and
With
make it a
Instagram,
part of your strat?
I
Yeah.
think with this, well, I got kids. My kids are, I
Four
guess
of them. You have four
they're
kids.
young people. Yes, four
Yeah.
kids, and then the younger folks that connected to in the on the construction team, and then we also had a really strong design group
Yeah.
that was they're like these are the things that you have to do, and and so it wasn't that, again, that wasn't hard, but it was fun, right? And then that was learning for me. I didn't really know what, how to do an Instagram,
Figured it out.
but yeah, and it was also, remember I had some encouragement from you and how to, make sure you're communicating well in the,
I think mostly I was like, are you signing these people up for your wait list? Can you take their money? Take their money, Rob.
yeah, it
I
did get.
remember you like, I got to get Office R&D. What am I doing? I got to get this set up so I can take a deposit.
Well, it did turn into a wonderful opportunity to engage with people that I thought would be a good fit,
Yeah.
and so we came out of the gate with, members that were sort of like, what, I know,
What was your occupancy rate when you finally opened?
let's see, I needed to look back at that.
Yeah, that was
I,
ish.
I'm thinking in my mind's eye now as I go around the offices, I'm walking,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Matthew he was first. Okay. Janet, she had this office. She was, right away, and then there was a team down in here. They had one of the cul-de-sacs, and we're evolving in our learning of, hey, these areas where we have a group of offices could be a team suite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't necessarily, it played out that way a little bit at first. So I'm gonna say I came out of the gate at about 30%.
Yeah.
And I only have 38 private offices, right? So
Yeah.
if
Wait,
I
how many
come out
total
of the
square
gate
feet?
with 20,000, just under 20,
20,000. Okay. Yeah.
right, between the two floors.
Yeah.
And so, and then that's outside of the, the event space, right?
Yeah.
And the lobby, if you will, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lobby area as you come into the building, and then there's also a hallway that takes you down along the fountain. And so, if you're an upper floor tenant, that would be the way you would access the elevators to go up.
Yeah.
But so that adds to spatially what the
Yeah.
visual spatial, more spaciousness, if you
Yeah.
will, visually as
And
you.
back to the pro forma, your cam line must be intense.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, there's an element of like if you were an upper floor tenant, in this building, you have a core factor of like 40%, right? Well, can you pass that along in a,
Right.
and the answer is no. And so
Yeah.
there was some, we just made some caps just that made sense.
Yeah.
But again, that adds to the it's an amenity, really,
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
think about it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Totally. Okay, so tell me about your team. And you recently took your community manager to a GWA immersive. And I'd love to hear about your mindset because you go to conferences and then you took your team member. And not a lot of people take their team. It's expensive. And then they're like, well, they're only going to be here for a couple of years. It's such a chicken or egg problem. How
Yeah.
do you think about that?
Well, it makes a lot of sense, right? Does it pass the common sense test, right? Does it make sense? Because, Rachel's relatively new. She's been here for a year and a half, essentially. And she
You know,
needs,
that's not relatively new in community manager time. Everybody listening's like, a year and a half. That's amazing. 2 years. 2 years.
and the young lady before that was 2 years.
See?
And
Yeah.
she did not go.
Did you
Um,
invite her?
I did invite her. I did
Oh,
invite it just, and then she was she was starting a family. And
okay.
so that it just didn't make sense at that
Yep.
point. But I was doing before we were even open, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was, in this
You were
learning
working with
learn
me. It
mode.
was Taylor, right? You put her in the community manager
Mhm,
school.
mhm,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So, but we've done the community manager
Yep.
school, yes. And then, but it just made sense for now, Rachel is really she's digging deep into some things in our software,
Okay.
and she needs to have these relationships.
Connections. Yeah. Like real life connections. So she can be like, I'm going to call you and you're going to pick up. Yeah.
Exactly. And the younger generation is a little bit, I'd like to continue to, in person, real, relationships that's formed in person versus
Yeah.
all virtual. I think, I guess it's okay, but it's just for me, I'm old school. And so
Yeah.
to see someone in person and to talk to them, then go to spaces and
Yeah.
visit them, it makes a lot of sense. And then, we've budgeted for it too, right? Like
Yeah.
it's going to be,
Yeah.
it'd be different if just like, hey, let's go tomorrow. And,
Yeah.
oh, wow. And the plane, is four times as much as it would be if you, thought about it in
Yeah.
advance, right? So.
Yeah.
But
For
yeah,
sure.
no, it's really about, trying to resource her with, so that she can have
Yeah.
some
So
um
she can do, but yeah, she's
network.
interested, she's engaged, and you're equipping her to, there's a return on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool to have fun, right? When when your team is out, they can have a good
Yeah.
time and meet people. And then there's a lot of some of it is again, I know all these people or whatever. It's like, well, this is an opportunity for her to meet some of the people I've been talking about, but also, like we had, well, Bill Bennett came here, he stopped by, right? And so, anyway,
Did he stop by on his trip around the country?
I think he was visiting his son.
Okay.
And
Oh.
then he was driving up to DC,
Hmm.
and he emailed and said, "Hey Rob, I'm going to be coming through Charlottesville. What would that look like?" And I'm like, "It would look like good."
Yeah.
That's what it would look
You are signed up.
like.
I know he
And
just bought a building in the town next to me, and I messaged him. I was like, dude, next time you come through the airport, I'd better be on your list.
yeah, no, it was, and it's really funny. That day we sponsor a Charlottesville, what's called Charlottesville Entrepreneurs and Espresso, where it's a meetup for entrepreneurs, and there's always an ask from an early stage company, and there's also a crash and learn story by a seasoned
Ooh,
entrepreneur.
nice. Yeah.
Well, the crash and learn speaker had something happen, they couldn't make it or whatever, and so the young lady that runs the program, she said, "Hey Rob, do you know anybody, you have anybody?" And I'm like,
You
"Guess
did not.
what?" And he jumped up in there. It was yeah. It was all that.
That's
That
hilarious.
is pretty funny. It was pretty
And
cool.
he's a professor too. I think he's still teaching, which is, I love that about him. That's like this unexpected Bill Bennett thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I can't tell. There's so the collaborative nature of the
Yeah.
industry is what makes it special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. It's crazy. Yeah, it's really, really good. Real quick, back to the immersive. I like, well, you've been to the big conferences. I like the immersive for team members because I mean, you've got more people at the big conferences. Could be overwhelming for people not
Mhm.
used to that kind
Mhm.
of, how do you even get started? Whereas the immersive is like small enough. You probably,
Yeah.
introduced her to everybody,
Yeah.
get her, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you're right. I'm an extrovert, so we have a large group of people that will tend to energize me, but
Yeah.
everybody's like that, and so you have opportunity to go deeper with. And then we had like Flip took us to dinner one. I mean, just like, and this was all serendipitous, right? And
Yeah.
so, um,
Flip showed up at an event. That's pretty I mean, he always comes.
I
He
think he
just
was
doesn't.
well, his team was speaking, right? And so
Oh,
um,
nice. Okay.
that was it was.
I know. I should have gone. I should have gone.
I know, I,
I had a
I was shocked that you weren't
that
there.
I wasn't there. I know. I had a big birthday that
I didn't
week.
even, it's funny. I didn't even text you or
I
reach
know.
out to you because
Right.
I'm just like, of
That would
course.
have flipped the switch. I know. And neither of us are at Juicy this week. I'm having lots of FOMO about missing all the stuff. I'll be in
Yeah,
Denver for sure.
yeah.
Even though
But
G
there is
yeah.
something coming up
What?
in Colorado.
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. I need to book my ticket. Actually, I cannot buy a plane ticket right now. California is running out of oil, jet fuel and oil. I
And a
did
lot
just
of
book a flight to Chicago, to your point, way too late because I knew this was coming and I am the worst. It was like $1 million. It was really an expensive ticket. So maybe I'll
California.
drive.
Mm.
Mm. Anyway, that's as far as we're going on
Right,
the
right, right.
politics. I'm just saying, but things in California, $7 a gallon is at the pump right now.
I'm very, very thankful. With one of my apps for a local thing here, I paid $3.40.
Crazy.
But
Yeah.
it might have 10 cents off a gallon, but still.
Yeah. I don't, my husband's like, why do you like what I don't know. Gas prices have always bothered me. Like just a weird thing that I don't like to pay for. So
We're hovering at about $4.09 or four. I've seen four
yeah.
3.29, right about now. But yeah, the futures, will respond as news
Yep.
comes,
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Be a
but
little delay though, because the supply is delayed. It takes forever to get oil here because it's coming from anyway. I was talking to my daughter about this last night, so it's top of mind. She's interested in all this stuff. She keeps me up on all the current news when I try to avoid it. Okay,
we
what
got
else?
unplugged, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know it's funny. She was asking me last night. We were getting a boba, and we were talking about business. Maybe you could talk to her about this because she's not interested in my opinion about really anything right now. She said she wants to start a company that makes that she how did she put it? She wants to um start a company that's really successful but not charge a lot for the product
Okay,
so that it makes everybody really happy
okay,
and that she still does well. And I
okay.
was like trying to explain to her, like, it's not usually how, a great product usually comes with a higher price, but, trying to give her the business
No, no,
school,
no,
like,
but
vibes.
fundamentally, she's in a good spot, right? She's like, I want to solve, a problem for lots of
Yeah.
people,
Yep.
right?
She does. She wants to. So I did try to explain to her. I was like, okay, usually how it works is somebody would start a company, try to have high profit margins, and then do something with that money, like what we were talking about at the beginning, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
I
she
like
did.
that.
Yeah.
Remember, Mom, your job at this point sometimes is just to sow seeds.
Yeah. Sow
And
some
then
seeds.
there will
Mostly
be
just
others
listen.
in the
Yeah.
village that will help to water
Yes.
them.
She needs a village, though. It's hard to get a village for a 14-year-old.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Let me think back. I remember. My youngest is 19. So
Maybe some good coaches.
coaches,
Yeah.
that's yes. Coaches for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
High variability with the coaches. Not everybody's a Rob Archer. Let me
Well,
tell you
I was
that.
just that dad that got on the sideline and was like, yeah. And then before you know it, I'm
Yep.
on the
You're like,
field.
I don't know if I like how this is going. Put
Right.
me in, coach.
I've,
I'm going to
I
be the
really have
coach.
enjoyed encouraging young people over the years, and so the coaching was, just makes for a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. Wait, do you still coach? What are your community
I
activities?
was actually the head lacrosse coach for my son's high school team for the last 2 years, and have been working to. There's a young man who's in place now who is the absolute. This is just a superstar of a coach, and he's been an answer to prayer. So I was actually sort of filling in, but I do, I've enjoyed just the young people, the
Yeah.
parents have been great. In this particular, it's a smaller private school, and the head of the school and the head of the athletics, just amazing people. For exactly, this is how the Charlottesville thing. The guy that's our CEO of athletics played football here in Virginia and played in San Francisco professionally for
Oh, wow.
several years and came back, right,
Yeah.
as some of his teammates have, and he's now our athletic director, and it's just all good stuff.
That's
So
a great ecosystem. Like, because that's what it is, right? Like, he wouldn't come back if he didn't have friends, and
yeah,
that just is like a cycle.
yeah,
That's,
and it's
yeah.
a beautiful place, right? We're nestled
Yeah.
in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and
I'm gonna
so
have to come visit because yeah, I'm always like, where's everybody retiring?
you
You
said,
know, you're like
what did
right
you just say?
there.
What did you just say? I'm
Oh,
going to.
right.
I'm not. Did I hit?
I'll come visit. See, now I have another
Did I
why.
hear that
I'm
correctly?
scoping it for
Is this
my.
being transcribed? Are we gonna, is this gonna,
Okay,
can I
to
write
everybody
that back for
listening, I
you?
owe Rob a visit for sure. I have to look at the map. I gotta, yes, I need to plan a trip.
We're right in the middle of Virginia,
You're
ain't?
right. I know, but like, what are you on the way to? I gotta make it efficient.
Yes. All right, I got you. You
Get a
got to come to
multitask. Okay, but
DC.
you're
Remember,
right.
we're an hour and a half from 2 hours from DC.
Totally.
You
Yeah.
know, a couple hours from the Research Triangle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I do.
We're an
Right. I
hour.
do need to go to Charlotte. That's what I go to Charlotte and see Derek
Yep.
and Bronny, and I'll come visit.
We're an hour
That needs
from
to happen soon.
Richmond.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Come on.
I'm coming.
Okay.
Okay. What are you excited about right now? What's next?
Well, the weather's changed, which is fantastic, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Today it's, sunny and 78,
I
right?
was
So,
telling my mom, who lives in upstate New York, I listened to this guy who I think he's a professor at one of the big schools, and he studies happiness. And he claims that the data shows that people who live in California and people who live in the Midwest, that like weather is not a factor that determines happiness. And that
hmm.
seems like complete bullshit to me. I mean, I'm just saying, it's always nice here. And I remember what it was like on the East Coast in the Midwest, especially this time of year when you're like, oh my God, can we just get like a ray of sun? Yeah.
No, it's exciting. And, we've got our oldest is completing his undergraduate degree, and so that's coming up here soon. That's exciting. A couple of birthdays
Nice.
in our family in
Yeah.
May. What else is exciting? There's a festival here, Tom Tom Festival, where a lot of folks come. We have, there's a crowdfunded pitch night. There's a lot
Ooh,
of community engagement conversations that
fun.
happen.
Yeah.
The hosted the NC2A Final Four is being hosted for lacrosse, men's lacrosse in
Ooh.
Charlottesville.
Ooh, nice. Wow.
So that's end of May. That's going to be
That's
exciting.
excitement. Yeah.
So, a lot of it centers around sports. Obviously, this is
Yeah.
a college town. All right.
Yeah.
So, but then the community events that happen are neat. And then in terms of I guess in business itself, I've got just a couple of young people that I'm excited about to be able to encourage and mentor a little bit as they're launching new companies. And they're in this process of, trying to validate the problem that they really want to, if they solve it, there's a real market for that. And can they
Yeah.
monetize? What's the business model? So there's that. And then, what else? Every, you know,
Yeah.
every phase of my life or aspect of my life, I look there. It's like, oh, wait, this is kind of
What's
exciting.
going
Let's
on
get our
there? Yeah.
garage cleaned out, right? Boom. You know,
I mean, we'll take that as something to be excited about. I got a big
right.
pile in the middle of mine that needs to be managed.
Oh no, we've been just recently, patched some cracks, repainted with the speckle fancy paint, and then the opportunity to get into every corner and go, wow, 25 years is a long
Yeah.
time to collect a spider
Stop.
web dust ball.
Yep. And 4 kids. I mean, I have one kid. Half the stuff in the garage is hers.
Yeah, we do have a trash can full of lacrosse sticks, and then of course there's cones and
Right. Yep.
pennies and
Mm-hmm.
yes,
All
there's
the equipment.
cleats
Yep. I hear
and
you.
helmets
Yep.
and
Gotta
tools. I have a lot of tools,
tools.
done a lot of sort of projects particularly when we were in the frozen yogurt business.
Yeah, you're right.
Lots of the building,
Yeah.
myself with my father-in-law.
Okay.
So I've got a piles of tools and
Yep. Dude
yeah,
stuff.
all of that.
Okay,
Well,
Rob.
you had asked an interesting question though, like it would
Oh,
be cool for people to listen when it comes to the fiscal responsibility or the
yeah.
projections that
Mm-hmm.
you have to do to make these things work. And then also understanding your market is challenging, right? We have a unique market. Yet I'm fortunate that I do get members to participate in surveys and to
Okay.
collect information when you ask like, we've got this amazing mix, because the idea was to be able to serve a diverse group of business professionals and
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs. And to think that we've got almost like 20% are in software kind of development. And then, we've got 20% of our members are sort of in, solopreneurs
Hmm.
or entrepreneurs. We've got some folks in wealth management and legal. We got some tech and startup. And then we've got probably, 10% of the groups that not for profit, right? And some
A
are
true mix.
pretty well fun. I think it is a true mix. And I try to be intentional about that as we start to, as we continue to grow. We've got some folks that are, 20% or so are companies of five or less.
Wow.
And then maybe 25% or so of companies of larger companies, 100 plus
Yeah.
employees. And, our environment here is more professional in terms of, like originally in the original design, there were some setups to be able to have taps and kegs, to make it
Oh,
social.
yeah.
And the reality is, I mean, I know what it takes to keep those things clean and all that. It's like, so if you're not having a lot of volume,
Yeah.
that's a nightmare. But the reality is we got folks that are, the average age here is, 40 plus, and it's, I'm going to pick up kids for soccer.
Right.
I'm
I
going
got
to
stuff to do. Right. I'm here to work. I mean, right. 100%.
And
Yeah.
so in the evenings, it's quiet here, we have a few folks that are working West Coast time, but on the weekend, same thing. It's a little more quiet. So
Yeah.
that's probably something I don't know that I would have really thought about, But when we do have event, and then we survey members and say, hey, if we were going to have an event, we're going to have libations or whatever, what time and what day? Thursday at 3:30. Don't be
Yep.
talking to me Friday at 5 o'clock.
Right. Totally. I'm not hanging out with you for
I
happy
love
hour on
you. I
Friday.
love you, but not that much.
Yeah. Totally. Yep.
So I've learned to think about the market here.
Yeah.
And
I think that's true in a lot of cases. I feel like I don't know where, maybe like a WeWork vibe that people got the idea that like I don't even know if outside of like a Manhattan that that's really true for WeWork, right? I mean, my WeWork is full of what you just
right,
described.
right, yeah. No,
Yep.
I've seen some places we actually have a shared workspace here in town that is more social,
Okay.
and it's actually right around the corner, but it's just more of a social vibe, and
Yeah.
that's okay, right? Because you need to
Yeah.
have
What's your
different
positioning? Where do you fit?
segments of the
Yep.
market that you serve, right?
Yep. Totally. Know who you are.
Yeah, I know, because I really had a thorough time of looking at, like what is our customer stack going to look like, right?
Yeah.
And looking at all of the different sort of creating archetypes for those, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you will put things in that you make changes, right? I thought students or graduate students would be a little bit more a part of
Oh,
the
yep.
demographic, but it doesn't,
They don't like to pay for things.
right? And
Yep.
it's right. And so there's that. Some places love, I guess, maybe childcare is not that those are some of the specific ones I know you talk
Yeah.
about.
Yep.
We love kids. We love kids. I love kids, but it's just like, but having everybody's kids here wouldn't work well for
No, we don't want any crayons in the
productivity and
space.
focus.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So that's just, some
Yep.
places have love. I know there's one place I was talking to somebody where it's a dog, you bring your dog and the
Oh,
dog's in an area, and I love dogs too, but that would really be more of a distraction here, I think, than anything else. So
speaking of dogs, I have to let you go before my next call because my dog ate half a bag of like a giant bag of dog food last night.
let's see.
Yeah, I gotta let him out.
Do you feed your dog fresh food?
No, I would like to be that person, like in my aspirational self, 100%. But no,
Well, what about making a little extra when you're having chicken? Make a little extra chicken.
no, they get a little extra chicken, sweet potatoes, that kind of thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay. I was just making sure you do live in California, so I'm making
I
sure.
know, totally. No, and I do love my dogs, really, like
Oh,
human.
there's more than one.
Two, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I came home yesterday and the little one, it wants to tell on the big one. Like I know her vibe. She's like, "Oh, he did something bad." And it took me a while before I got to the garage and I was like, "Oh, he did do something very bad."
Oh my goodness.
Yep. And he doesn't let her have any of it. Like
Oh, that's
I can
not
tell
good.
she didn't eat any of the food. It was her food that he ate half of. So that's going to be pleasant.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I gotta go. I will see you in Denver, I hope.
Yeah.
Or Charlottesville first. Let's see.
I'm
Hold your breath. I know.